If I asked you to name the number one thing that kills marriages, what would you say? Now, most people would say infidelity. They'd say cheating is the ultimate deal breaker, but they would be wrong. Cheating is an explosion. It's loud, it's messy, and yes, it does end a lot of marriages. But there's a silent killer that destroys way more relationships than affairs ever could. It's a cancer that grows slowly, quietly over 5, 10, or even 20 years. You might not even notice it's there until one day you wake up next to a stranger and you feel nothing. Or worse, you feel disgust. And that killer is resentment. If you feel like there's a wall of ice between you and your spouse, or if you find yourself keeping a mental list of every mistake that they've made since 2015, then your marriage is infected. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you how to diagnose if resentment has taken over your relationship, why it's actually more dangerous than hate, and most importantly, I'm going to give you a step-by-step detox plan to drain that poison out of your marriage before it's too late. Hi everyone, I'm Brad Browning, aka The Marriage Guy, and I've spent over a decade helping couples pull their relationships back from the brink. And frankly, I've seen this pattern thousands of times. Couples don't usually divorce because they had a massive fight. They divorce because they stopped caring enough to fight. They divorce because resentment hardened into a wall that love couldn't get through. So let's define what I mean by resentment, because it's different from anger. See, anger is hot. Anger is reactive. If your spouse forgets your birthday, you might get angry. You might yell or cry or express the emotion. And that's actually healthy. It means you still care. It means you're invested in the outcome. But resentment is cold. Resentment is what happens when that anger isn't expressed or when it's ignored repeatedly. It's anger that has cooled down and hardened into a solid rock in your stomach. It sounds like, in your head, it sounds like this. He never listens, so why should I even bother talking? Or she's always critical, so I'm just going to stay at work late. Or I do everything around here and nobody appreciates it. See, when you're angry, you want a resolution. But when you're resentful, you want revenge. Or you want to punish them. And usually you punish them by withdrawing your love, your attention, and your warmth. Now, if this sounds familiar, don't panic. Resentment is common, but it's lethal if you don't treat it. Before we fix it, we need to identify exactly what kind of resentment you're dealing with. Now, resentment usually shows up in one of two disguises, and you do need to know which one is sabotaging your marriage. So first, there's silent resentment. This is more of the slow leak. If you have this, you probably describe yourself as a peacemaker or somebody who hates conflict. You swallow your feelings. You say, I'm fine, when you definitely aren't fine. You give the cold shoulder and withdraw affection. Now, on the surface, your marriage might look calm, but underneath, you're pulling away brick by brick. Your spouse might ask, "What's wrong?" and you say nothing, even though you're screaming on the inside. And this is dangerous because your spouse can't fix a problem if they don't know it exists. And second, there's aggressive resentment. This is the sniper. And if you have this, you don't stay silent. You leak your resentment through sarcasm, little digs, and constant criticism. You aren't necessarily yelling, but you're constantly taking shots. Oh, you're actually doing the dishes? Miracles do happen. Must be nice to sit on the couch while I do everything. That kind of thing. Now, this creates a toxic environment where your spouse feels like they can never do anything right, so they stop trying altogether. Whether you're the silent type or the sniper type, the root cause is the same: unmet needs and unsaid words. Now, there's one more concept you need to understand before we get to the solution. It's a psychological term called negative sentiment override. This is basically a fancy way of saying your brain has been rewired to interpret everything your spouse does as an attack or a flaw. So when you're in the honeymoon phase, you have positive sentiment override. If your spouse forgets to call, you think, they must be busy working hard for our future. You give them the benefit of the doubt. But when resentment sets in, you enter negative sentiment override. If your spouse forgets to call, you think, they don't respect me. They only care about themselves. You attribute the worst possible motive to their actions. Even neutral things become annoying. The way they chew, the way they breathe, the way they laugh, it all starts to irritate you. And this is the lens that you have to smash. We have to change the story you're telling yourself about your spouse. So here's how you're going to do it. The biggest symptom of resentment is scorekeeping. See, in a healthy marriage, you do things for each other because you're a team. But in a resentful marriage, you do things for each other because you're negotiating a trade. So you start basically keeping a mental ledger. I did the dishes 3 nights in a row, so he better handle the kids all weekend. I let her parents stay for a week, so she can't get mad at me for buying this golf club. You're constantly tracking debts and credits. And because you're resentful, the exchange rate is always rigged in your favor. You overestimate what you do, and you underestimate what they do. And this creates a creditor versus debitor relationship. You walk around feeling like the creditor, like your spouse owes you. You feel superior. You feel like a martyr. And your spouse walks around feeling like the debtor, like they can never pay off the balance, so why even try? You have to tear up the scorecard. And I mean literally, you have to accept that marriage is never 50-50 in the short term. Some weeks it's 90-10. Some weeks it's 20-80. If you want to save the marriage, you have to stop acting like an accountant. You have to decide to give freely without expecting an immediate return. Now, I know that's hard. Maybe you're thinking, Brad, if I stop keeping score, I'm just going to get taken advantage of. But the truth is, scorekeeping kills generosity. If your spouse feels like every nice thing you do comes with a price tag, they won't want your nice things. They'll reject your help because they don't want to be in debt to you. When you stop keeping score, you remove the pressure. And when the pressure is gone, generosity can actually start to flow back and forth again. Resentment thrives on vague complaints. It loves absolute words like always and never. You never listen to me. You're always on your phone. You never help around the house. Now, these aren't requests for change. They're character assassinations. When you say you never listen, you aren't asking for connection. You're attacking their personality. And what happens when you attack someone? They defend themselves. They fight back. Or they shut down. And then you feel unheard, which adds another layer of resentment to the pile. It's a vicious cycle. So you need to learn the art of the specific request. Resentment is usually just a disguised wish. Underneath, you're lazy, the wish is, I need help with the laundry. Underneath, you don't care about me, the wish is, I'd love to go on a date with you. So strip away the judgment and ask for the thing that you actually want. Instead of, you never help, you think I'm your maid. Try, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed with the house. Could you help me tackle the kitchen tonight? Do you hear the difference there? The first one invites a fight. The second one invites a solution. It's almost impossible to say no to a vulnerable, specific request, but it's very easy to fight back against a criticism. So if you change your language, you change the result. And when you start getting the results you want, when they actually do help with the kitchen, the resentment starts to fade because your needs are finally being met. There's a famous researcher named Dr. John Gottman who can predict divorce with over 90% accuracy. And his biggest finding is something called the 5-to-1 ratio. So he found that in stable, happy marriages, for every one negative interaction, so a criticism, an eye roll, a fight, there are at least 5 positive interactions. Things like a smile, a compliment, a touch, a laugh. Whereas in resentful marriages, that ratio flips. It's usually, 1-to-1 at best, or even negative. And here's the scary part. Resentment wears a pair of dark sunglasses. When you are resentful, you literally can't see the positive things that your spouse does. They might make the bed, but you don't notice. They might smile at you, but you think they're faking it. You only see the mistakes. You act like a detective looking for evidence that they're a bad partner. And because you're looking for it, you find it constantly. Now, to break the resentment cycle, you have to force the ratio back up. You have to take off the dark sunglasses. So I want you to try an experiment for 1 week. I call it the treasure hunt. Every day, your only job is to catch your spouse doing something right. It can be tiny. Maybe they put their shoes away. Maybe they asked how your meeting went. Maybe they just looked good in that shirt. But when you see it, you have to say it out loud. Thanks for taking out the trash. I appreciate you making coffee. You look great today. Now, at first, this is definitely going to feel fake. You're going to have to grit your teeth because you're still mad at them for 10 years of other stuff. But do it anyways, because you're rewiring your brain to scan for the good instead of the bad. And you're feeding their mirror neurons. When they start hearing appreciation instead of criticism, they're naturally going to start doing more of the things that get them praised. You can't hate somebody who's consistently appreciating you. It's psychologically very difficult. Now, I know that some of you are watching this and thinking, Brad, this sounds nice, but my resentment is too deep. There was an affair, there was betrayal. I can't just appreciate my way out of this. And I hear you. If the root of your resentment is a major trauma like infidelity, then these steps are just the beginning. You need a deeper repair strategy to rebuild trust before you can even think about the 5-to-1 ratio. Now, if you're not sure if your marriage is past this point of no return, I've got a free tool for you that can help. It's a 3-minute quiz on my website. It analyzes the specific problems in your marriage, whether it's cheating, boredom, constant fighting, and it gives you a realistic score on your chances of saving it. You can take the quiz for free right now at marriageguy.com/quiz. Like I said, it's totally free, it's confidential, and it will give you a lot of clarity on what your next move should be. Another huge source of resentment is the expectation that your spouse should just know what you need. I hear this constantly. I shouldn't have to tell him or comfort him. He should just know. Or, if she had loved me, she would know that I hate when she does that. Folks, your spouse is not a psychic. They are not a mind reader. And assuming they are is a guaranteed recipe for resentment. When you expect them to read your mind, you're setting a trap that they're guaranteed to fall into. You stay silent about what you want. You wait for them to guess. They guess wrong, or they don't guess at all. And then you get mad at them for failing a test that they didn't even know they were taking. Of course, that's unfair and it's childish. If you're mad about something, you have to say it. If you want something, you have to ask for it. Don't use the silent treatment. The silent treatment is the most toxic form of resentment there is. It's frankly emotional abuse. It says, you don't even exist to me right now. If you're hurt, use your words. Say, I'm feeling really hurt because you forgot our anniversary. I need us to talk about it. That's vulnerable and it's brave. Sitting in the corner sulking and waiting for them to apologize for something they may not even realize they did is just cowardice. And it kills love. Now, this is the final and the hardest step. You have to understand what forgiveness actually is, because most people get this wrong. Most people think that forgiveness is a feeling. They wait until they feel like forgiving their spouse. But let me tell you right now, if you wait until you feel like it, you will wait forever. The feeling of forgiveness only comes after the decision to forgive. And most people think that forgiveness is something you do for the other person. You think forgiveness means saying, it's okay that you hurt me, or I condone what you did. But that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. Nelson Mandela once said, resentment is like drinking poison and hoping that it will kill your enemies. When you hold on to resentment, you are the one suffering. You are the one carrying around a backpack full of rocks every single day. You're the one waking up with a tight chest. Your spouse might be totally oblivious, sleeping like a baby while you stew in your anger. Now, forgiving them doesn't mean you trust them immediately. It doesn't mean what they did was right. It just means that you're refusing to carry the rock anymore. You're deciding, I'm not going to let past events control my future happiness. You have to make a conscious choice to evict the ghosts of the past. If you're bringing up a fight from 2018 and an argument from today, then you aren't fighting fair. You're using ammunition that should have expired years ago. You have to practice decisional forgiveness. That means you wake up every morning and say, I'm choosing to let go of yesterday. Now, you might have to make that choice 100 times before the emotion catches up, but eventually the backpack does get lighter. If you start doing these things, if you stop scorekeeping, you ask for what you want, drop the resentment, it is going to feel weird at first. Brené Brown calls this vulnerability hangover. You might feel exposed. You might feel weak or worry, wait, I'm being nice and open. What if they crush me? And that kind of fear is normal. But courage is feeling that fear and doing it anyways. Resentment is a shield. It protects you from getting hurt again, but it also guarantees that you'll never be loved again. You can't be guarded and connected at the same time. You have to pick one. If you drop the shield, yes, there is a risk, but it's the only path that leads back to a happy marriage. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.